yes, good morning to you. I know, yes, good morning to you once again. It's Thursday, the 18th of June, 2026. The program is On the Lord's Side, Christian Perspectives on News and Current Events. My name is Olufemi Oguntokun. You can follow me on X at Olufemi OG. You can follow Gospel Bells Radio on X at Gospel Bells Radio. And, of course, one of the matters getting attention on X, on Twitter in Nigeria yesterday and today has been the commissioning of houses for Nigerian judges, or rather for judges of the appeal court in Nigeria. These houses built in Abuja, we understand, and sponsored by the administration of Federal Minister Wike, who is the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory under the administration of President Tinubu, as well, invited considerable controversy, and rightly so, you would say, rightly so. And I have no doubt whatsoever that commissioning should invite controversy, and it deserves that we just engage with this story. To first explain why that controversy exists, there are some out there who will say, well, what's the big deal? The government has built houses, and if you see the houses, they're not just houses, they are palatial of sorts, they're mansions, and that's the proper way to put it. If you have seen the videos of those houses, some may say out there and say, look, what's the big deal? The government has built mansions, houses for judges of the appeal court. What's there to see? Is that not part of the duty of government to do things like that? And this is the time where many Nigerians should benefit from some civic education on what is the role of government and what is the role of the different arms of government. I mean, at the most basic level, we all know that we have the doctrine of the separation of powers entrenched in the Nigerian Constitution, and it's for a good reason. What does that doctrine say? It basically say that all the powers of the state should not be concentrated in one person or one institution. And political scientists have historically identified three core powers of the state. The executive power, which is the power to execute the laws, to implement laws and policies, to implement programs, policies and laws. Then the judicial powers, the power to determine disputes, to interpret the laws, to interpret the constitution, and to determine disputes, which power is vested in the courts. And of course, legislative powers, the powers to make the laws themselves. The thinking behind this is that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, which is true for any human being, for any human institution. The parallel to that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, is to go back to 1 Samuel and read of the account of when Israel demanded for a king. Israel had been ruled by judges appointed by God himself, and during the judgeship, if I may put it that way, of Samuel, at some point the people revolted in a manner of speaking and said, look around. Yeah, we've been having judges for a long time, but you know what? Look around. The kingdoms around us, the other people, the other countries, they have kings. They have kings, and their kings are so powerful and so and so regal. We also want to have a king, and Samuel was distraught. He went to God. God said to Samuel, don't worry. It is not you who they have rejected. It is me that they have rejected. They want a king, they're going to get a king. But tell them the nature of the king that they're going to get. Because what they were proposing was to invest all the powers of the state in a single person, a single king. And the Lord said to them, said to Samuel, don't worry about it. They are going to get exactly what they have demanded for. They want a king, they're going to get a king, but do not hesitate to tell them the nature of the king that they will get. And Samuel listened to the Lord, and he told them, look, you're going to get a king, but this king is going to take your sons and make them his soldiers. He's going to conscript them into his army. He's going to take your daughters and make them work in his household, and on and on. He's going to tax you. He's going to take he's going to take out of your harvest and all that. And the people, as foolish as they were, said, notwithstanding, we want a king. That is a parallel to the power corrupt, absolute power corrupt, absolute. If you invest all the powers in a state in a single person, that power will corrupt that person. That person will abuse that power, no matter how good the person is. That is the nature of the human character. And it's not only about nations, not only about countries, also about institutions, also about companies. That is why even in companies we talk about checks and balances. We talk about governance, and governance is a big deal now in corporate affairs, so much so that even the government institutions are concerned about how the leading corporate entities in the world are governed. You want to be sure that absolute power is not considered in a single person. It used to be the case, for example, in corporate practice in Nigeria, that a single person could be both the chairman of the board of directors and also the managing director of a company. It is no longer the case now, especially for public companies. In public companies now, it is now statutorily required that the office of chairman of the board should be separated from the office of the managing director, because you want one to discharge the role of the oversight role over the other, and history has proven that when you have those two offices combined in one, especially in Nigeria, that the office is abused. I've gone through all this length to talk about the doctrine of separation of powers, just to lay a foundation for this story, the story of the government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu through the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, building houses for Court of Appeal judges, gifting them these houses. According to the report, it says that the controversy centers on the commissioning of housing units, including for Court of Appeal judges in Abuja's Katankwe district by the FCT administration under Minister Wike. This is framed officially as welfare support for judicial officers. So I want us to understand this. This is framed as welfare support for judicial officers. So what we find here is that the executive arm of government, which under the doctrine of separation of powers is distinct from the judicial arm of government, separate and co-equal. That is the doctrinal approach to explaining the relationship among the three arms of government, separate but co-equal, meaning that, strictly speaking, no arm of government is superior to the other. Under Nigeria's constitutional practice, many people who are not versed in the understanding of constitutional law may not fully understand that or even accept it. But the truth is that the executive arm of government, that's the presidency, is not superior to the judiciary. Neither is the judiciary superior to the executive arm, and none of those two is superior to the legislative arm. They are separate and co-equal. But now we find that one of the co-equal arm, the executive arm, has thought it fit to give welfare support for judicial officers. According to Minister Wike, it has been framed as welfare support for judicial officers for the 50th anniversary of the Court of Appeal. And as an aside, we should mention that this year, 2026, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the establishment of the Court of Appeal in Nigeria. According to the minister, it will improve the living conditions, the security and independence of judges by reducing reliance on inadequate or rented accommodations. Critics view it as executive overreach that risk compromising judicial impartiality, especially with public funds amid economic hardship and ahead of elections. Well, many people on X, many people are really passionately discussing this matter. People have gone as far as saying, look, don't deceive us. Let's call it spade a spade. This is almost akin to a bribe given to judges. There was a time, and we did engage with that story, when judges from the Court of Appeal paid a courtesy visit to the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, and many people in the legal community were gobsmacked, shocked, and scandalized, really, by some of those judges when they paid that courtesy visit to the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, saying to him, look, we look forward to your support. We look forward to you gifting us houses because, hey, we need that assurance that after office we would be well catered for. And many people were scandalized by that, as well as they should. So many people have gone as far as saying, look, this is clearly a bribe, a bribe given by the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu to judges, and that, look, all the framing as welfare support should just be seen as a specious argument. And some people have said that, especially Minister Wike has a history of similar gestures, that when he was River State governor, he gave houses and SUVs to judges. Many on X are saying, look, you are giving houses to judges, mansions. In fact, well, should you not contrast that luxury with the condition of service for doctors and teachers and civil servants and ordinary Nigerians? And this is so true. I'm a lawyer myself, and I respect judges. I have the highest regard for judges and those who work in the judiciary, and the judiciary is so important to the well-being of any nation, and also to the continuation and maintenance of law and order in any country. But there are other people who are equally important as well: doctors, teachers, civil servants, and I'm going to get to that shortly. Many people are also talking about how this ties into upcoming elections. Now, you know that in Nigeria, elections are really decided by the votes of people, votes of the citizens, or more often than not, because of our weak institutions, because our laws are because our institutions are weak, and the people, and of course, our institutions are weak because people manning those institutions are do not have strong and sterling character. That's often the ultimate reason why institutions are weak. You find that many of our elections end up in courts. Indeed, the last election that brought President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to power ended up in court, went all the way to the Supreme Court. So politicians in Nigeria have gotten around to understand that elections often end up in court because, the institutions are weak, processes are often mangled together, and maybe somebody has now understood, according to many commentators on X, that look, what you need to do is to get the judges on your corner. In your corner, rather, if you have the judges in your corner, maybe you have you have a greater assurance of winning the election. And so somebody wrote on X saying APC is giving priority to judges because of election litigation. And of course, some defend, some say that, Wike claiming no influence, a judge once ruled against him, but hey, it's just to support judges as a welfare gesture to support judges. I've spoken about the doctrine of separation of powers, and this is so important. The doctrine of separation of powers means that, well, things that have to do with the welfare, the remuneration of each arm of government should not be influenced by the other at all. It should not be influenced by the other at all. What should have been the proper approach here? I mean, nobody out there should be saying, judges don't deserve to have houses of their own. The right approach should be, one, budgetary allocation, through the National Assembly to the NJC. The NJC is that body that has supervisory control and exercises governance over the affairs of judges. So, if truly we have, as a nation, we have discovered that, our judges do not have access to decent housing, or they are not assured of having houses after retirement, budgetary allocation should be made through the National Assembly, given to the NJC to build these houses, so that the judges see the houses not as from the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, not as from the presidency, but as from Nigeria. Because whatever I get as a result of a budgetary allocation through the National Assembly has not come from the president, has not come from a single person or a minister. It has come from the nation, and that should have been the right approach. It should have been NJC led. It should have been via a budgetary allocation through the National Assembly. There must have been that should be, in any case, better transparency about this. For example, one of the leading legal commentators in Nigeria, Femi Falana, has argued that the executive cannot unilaterally gift houses to federal judges. Funds should go through proper constitutional channels, right? And this should not ever have happened. Now, I will also comment on what should be the right approach. And this is not limited to just the gifting of this gift. Just recently on this program, we were engaging with the news of Elon Musk becoming the first trillionaire, the first dollar trillionaire in history. And while engaging with that story, we engage further with the different views expressed by the different classes in the political spectrum about the emergence of Elon Musk as a trillionaire. You know that there are some people on the political left who argue and they say, look, we don't want billionaires in the world. We don't want the super rich. The super rich are the problem, and that what we need to do is to confiscate their wealth and give it to the poor. We did engage with that, the foolishness of that kind of thinking. One is that once you confiscate wealth and give it to everybody, everybody becomes poor. Right. Second, once you do that, what you are doing essentially, we're talking about the super rich who did not steal their money, who did not steal their wealth. We're not talking about people who stole from the from the government. We're talking about people who engage in enterprise and build wealth. If you confiscate their wealth and give to others, you are disincentivizing entrepreneurship. Nobody in a society like that would then think of investing his time and resources and taking risk for entrepreneurial purposes. And then you have a society where production is not sufficient enough, to build new wealth. Again, we contrasted that with the reality that it is actually theft. It is theft when you take what belongs to somebody else compulsorily and give it to other people. That is why what the Bible teaches in the situations of where you have the super rich, it's not to confiscate their wealth, it's for their hearts to be so tuned to God that they are generous. Generosity is different from confiscation of wealth. Generosity to the poor. And so when we're dealing with that matter, and we're looking at the whole economic argument, right and left, about that, I mentioned then that instead, that when you have people who are truly concerned about poverty in a country or in a society, you should not be thinking about confiscating the wealth of other people, giving it to some other people. So you should not be thinking about somebody sitting at the table and allocating things, 5 naira to you, 20 naira to you. Next month again, take 5 naira and support, or 20,000 or 1 million for your support, which is exactly what is being done here with the Minister of Federal Capital sitting back and saying, oh, these judges, they need some welfare support. These judges, some of them, after they retire, they cannot fully maintain themselves. Therefore, I'll build a mansion for these people. I'll build a mansion for that person. I did say, when we're engaging with the news of Elon Musk, that the better approach is for a government to do what? To invest in infrastructure, to invest in what is called the enabling environment for entrepreneurship to thrive. The enabling environment, you want to have a system where housing is so affordable that judges, given their salary, can have access to mortgages and build their own houses, and have access to mortgages and pay for houses over a period of time, so much so that even a policeman could do that. Teachers are able to. That's the kind of economy that a government should invest in building, not the Father Christmas kind of economy, not the headmaster kind of economy where you sit back and then you say, okay, next month I'm going to give, how much do we have now? We have this, okay, I'm going to divide it into 4. I'll give 1 to you, 1 to you, and then people come again, cap in hand, sir, I'll come again, we need support. You give to them. That is exactly what some politicians thrive on. And that appears to be the approach of the present government. The present government wants to have, is the tax and spend policy of many of the people on the political left. They want to increase taxation, bring everything into the storehouse, in a manner of speaking, and then they want to sit back and say, okay, now let me give it to you, and give it to you, and not give it to you, and not give it to that person. And of course, that is abuse. That's going to lead to abuses. People will begin to give largesse to those who can do them favors, and of course withhold gifts and withhold allocations to people who may oppose them, which is exactly what is happening right now, which is totally wrong. We as Christians, when we look at these things, we want to fully understand what is going on. What government should be doing is building the enabling environment for these things for entrepreneurship to thrive, for everyone who is doing decent work and earning wage in the country to be able to afford the basic things. If you have an economy where people as distinguished as judges are not able to afford houses of their own, there is something wrong with that kind of economy. That is the problem. That is what should be addressed, not for gifts to be so given. Now let's go to the Christian perspective on all of this, because even the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory has admitted that what is being done is what is giving welfare support. That's a gift to judges. What does the Bible say about judges accepting gifts? Remember, we're not talking about a situation where a budgetary allocation has been made by the National Assembly in the constitutionally prescribed manner for the NJC, that is the National Judicial Council, to build houses for judges. We're talking about a case where a member of the executive arm of government, Mr. Wike, Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, decided to give gifts to some judges as welfare support. What does the Bible say about the acceptance of gifts like that? Exodus 23:8. Deuteronomy 16:19. Do not accept a bribe, for a bribe blinds those who see and twists the words of the righteous. Gifts here often mean inducement, any inducement affecting judgment. And nobody should please insult our intelligence by saying, oh, these judges have their onions, notwithstanding that they have been gifted these houses by Minister Wike. They retain the impartiality to issue judgment against him. The Bible tells us not to be that simple-minded. It can't be that simple-minded, right? It can't be that simple-minded to think, oh, yeah, notwithstanding the gifts, they retain their impartiality. The Bible teaches that gifts blinds those who see and twist the words of the righteous. Once you have received a gift from someone, you can't see clearly, or even if you can see clearly, you pretend not to see. You are compromised in a manner of speaking. 2 Chronicles 19, Jehoshaphat to judges, he said, quote, consider carefully what to do, because you are not judging for mere mortals but for the Lord. And this is something that should be read by every Christian who is a judge. And every pastor or Christian leader who has a judge as his parishioner or in his congregation should remind those judges of this. Jehoshaphat to judges said to them, consider carefully what to do, because you are not judging for mere mortal but for the Lord. Now let the fear of the Lord be on you. Judge carefully, for with the Lord our God there is no injustice or partiality or bribery. That's what he said. Therefore with the Lord our God there is no injustice, no partiality, no bribery. And of course, if you read through Proverbs, you find repeated warnings that bribes corrupt. Bribes corrupt. Once you accept a gift like that, it corrupts. And of course, many Christians, in the circumstances we have described, would urge judges to decline or channel such support institutionally to preserve conscience and credibility. And of course, we do admit that our judges should enjoy improved welfare conditions. Not only them, but doctors and teachers. In fact, the whole economy is crying for intervention in such a way that anybody who is doing decent work is able, without welfare interventions from anyone, from any politician, to meet basic needs. I mean, think of an economy where the policeman, living on his salary, living within his means, can afford decent mortgage of a decent house, can afford to pay the children's school fees, has access to healthcare, and the same for teachers, and the same for practically everyone who is doing decent work in the economy. Not that everything will be perfect, not that you will not be challenging, not that money will not be tight now and then, but you can afford the basic things. Think of a society like that, and then you find that the incentive or maybe the temptation to engage in corrupt activities would rightly reduce. And I always say to people, we have to be clear-eyed. We don't have to bury our heads in the sand. You're going to find that those who do these things, those who, in the name of welfare allocation, do it, they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they are doing. I mean, as I've always said, when you talk about institutions, you're talking about people. You're talking about people because institutions are inanimate things. So when you talk about the judiciary, you're talking about the judges, the registrars, the lawyers who work in the judiciary. When you talk about the executive, you're talking about the president and his ministers and the human people who are there. So if we are actually talking about human beings, pray tell me, after this institution has given gift to that institution, which means the people in institution A have given gift to the people in institution B. Pray tell me how in the future, if the people in institution A call the people in institution B and say, look, we have a matter before you, pray tell how the people in institution B would say, look, please do not bring that up. We have nothing to do together. Well, you once had something to do together. A gift passed hands. I do hope that some persons will take this up and challenge even what has happened in court. So for those who have concerns about this, from a consumer point of view, you are right to have those concerns. And for us, who think from Christian perspectives, let us have no doubt whatsoever that gifts to judges is an abomination before God. Okay, next I want to go to another story, and this story is of an allegation made by someone out there on Twitter suggesting that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu pumped, listen to this, $150 million into Washington to bribe people to stop Trump's intervention in Nigeria. This is according to a security expert. And let's take some steps back just to build some foundation for this story. Remember that at some point last year, when the attacks by terrorists on Christians in the north, when it became unbearable, it still is unbearable. President Trump intervened when after many conservative politicians in the United States spoke out, about the lack of action by the Tinubu administration, lack of effort, the seeming lack of effort by the government to address the Christian genocide, the attacks on Christians and Christian churches in the north. Many conservative politicians in Washington, in the U.S. spoke up. Eventually, President Trump himself spoke up and said, "Look, I'm concerned about the persecution of Christians in Nigeria, and if the government does not act, I will do this and that." Of course, Trump made those threats. Eventually, he did authorize some attacks, maybe about 2 now on record, but the large-scale intervention that he promised has not been realized. We understand that there is some cooperation between the intelligence and military units in the U.S. and in Nigeria. Indeed, recently it was said that that collaboration also led to the killing of one of the a man who was described as the second most active terrorist in the world. But many people are suggesting now that the reason why the large-scale intervention threatened by Trump did not materialize was because, well, lobbyists, and you have to know who lobbyists are in the context of American politics, that lobbyists were persuaded Trump not to intervene in Nigeria in the manner that he originally proposed. I want us to listen to what this security expert said.
When the American intervention came first with the 2 tweets and then the Christmas Day intervention, instead of Nigerians to respond positively to what the intervention that the American government made through Donald Trump, let me tell you what the Nigerian response was. Nigeria flooded the United States of America with money. To do what? To deny that there was a Christian genocide. Nigeria, that will not take care of its citizens at home, officially, publicly released $10 million to a lobby firm, but from the charter in Washington, Nigeria's money in Washington that has been sent to neutralize what Trump has been doing is almost $150 million. We all know that we have more than enough documentation, more than enough clout to show that there really was a Christian genocide going on. And then later on, as I had mentioned more than 10 years ago, that in the final stages, there's going to be a fighting between Muslims. The ISWAP is the most deadly of all. The Fulani and the Boko Haram is Kanuri. Kanuris and the Fulani don't see eye to eye. Two predators are fighting to be the one to devour the nation. Secondly, all honorable Muslims who refuse to be a part of terrorism end up being killed. The first time was in Kano many years ago. And when this current administration responded by pouring money into Washington, let me tell people right now, a lot of people who have been working hard in Washington, I'll mention only one name. There's a young man, Stephen Enada, for instance. I want to tell you that when I sit in consultation groups with a lot of people right now, the money poured in by Nigeria has dampened the enthusiasm in Washington. A lot of people who were speaking up before, who had been informed, who had the information, all of a sudden are also coming down. However, the good news is Frank Wolf, Chris Smith, people like that, Bob Destro, Greg Stanton, this Andrew Wilder, Faith McDonald, these are people who refuse to give up.
So from what you are saying, is the Nigerian government bribing people that have been speaking up for Nigeria in Washington?
The mantra of the government today is that whatever problem money cannot solve will be solved by more money. When the American intervention came first with the 2 tweets and then the Christmas Day intervention, instead of Nigerians to respond positively to what the intervention.
Well, I do hope you followed what that security expert said, and I love the way he ended that submission, which is something popularized by one of the commissioners in Nigeria during the last election. That you will find that the philosophy of the current government in Nigeria, it would appear, would be whatever money cannot solve, whatever problem money cannot solve, more money would solve. More money would solve. This security expert suggesting that, when Trump first tweeted about the situation in Nigeria, the Christian genocide, and made those threats, and then made that Christmas Day attack, that you would have expected that, well, Nigeria would support him and say, look, yes, we really need help. We need to solve the Christian genocide problem. But instead of that, at least on record, Nigeria hired a lobby firm in the U.S. Paying as much as $10 million to deny the existence of Christian genocide in Nigeria. And you have to understand how these lobbies work and how shaping public opinion in the U.S. Was important at that time and continues to be important to the policies and actions that the government would take. Let's say Trump was of the mind of truly deploying extensive resources to fight against Christian genocide in Nigeria. If public opinion in the U.S. shifts against him, he would not do it more likely than not. For example, if those lobbies succeed in convincing people to say that, there is actually no Christian genocide in Nigeria. People say, well, why are you going to Nigeria? Why are you deploying resources if indeed there is no Christian genocide in Nigeria? And you have to understand how lobbies work in the United States. What do they do? These lobbies, they arrange meetings with officials, lawmakers, staff. They provide information. They provide briefings. They organize events. They shape media narratives and advocate for specific policies. So these are the people who will go to officials like senators, like representatives, like advisors to the president, members of the executive. They all different events. They conduct research. They give these people the result of the research they've conducted. They say, oh, we visited these people. We've done this. They begin to advocate for different things. Look, in Nigeria, what is needed is not military intervention, but military cooperation. What is needed in Nigeria is not direct attacks on the terrorists, but working through the Nigerian government, etc. They leverage the connections they have, their expertise and their access. These are people who have expertise in one area or the other, and they have connections. They leverage on the connections, the expertise, and the access, and they influence government policies. And many people who know how the system works in the United States, they know if you want to get a government to adopt a policy, if you know a government, an administration in the US was thinking about adopting one policy or the other, and you do not want that policy to see the light of day, what you would do would be to do what? Would be to engage lobbies to influence that that administration. Now, many people in Nigeria will hear that and say, oh, maybe we are just talking about bribery. It is not, well, it is not the naked corruption and bribery as it would happen in some other part of the world where you say, oh, money would exchange that. You don't have money exchanging hands directly like that. You just have these lobbies who are paid by people who want a definite outcome to influence the thinking of the people in the administration. Of course, bribery is a criminal offense in the US as well. But what you are going to find would be that these lobbies would then organize events, paid events. They could get people to go on some, events and invite them to dinner and discuss things with them. They just leverage their connections, their expertise, and access. And let's assume, for the sake of argument, that this is exactly what happened. I mean, just to be very clear about the fact, public records and reporting, because lobbyists are required, especially people who are lobbying for foreign interests in the United States, they are required under the Foreign Agents Registration Act in the US, popularly called FARA. They are required to report how much they receive from foreign government and foreign entities for their work. And that's a very smart thing for the United States, because if you do not have some bit of regulation around that, you find that people will just be representing foreign interests even to the detriment of the United States. So if a person is lobbying for a foreign country, and advocating for their interests, that person is required under the Foreign Agents Registration Act to register and to report how much he or she or the firm has been paid. So under that, public records show that roughly 13 billion naira or $9 million was paid to DCI Group. DCI Group is a Washington firm with Republican ties, because there's a Republican in government. So that Republican, which is Trump. So if you want to influence Trump or a Republican administration, you want to go through a lobbying firm that has extensive Republican ties. So just to say that, although this gentleman said $150 million, which we may not be able to verify, at least we know for a fact, public records show that $9 million was paid, about 13 billion naira at that time. And you have to think about this from different perspectives. The first perspective is, okay, so if the Nigerian government has 13 billion naira to spare on paying these lobbyists to influence President Trump, I think of what that money could have done to build up our military and our military response to the Christian genocide. If you have that much money to spare, couldn't you have spent it on improving security in Nigeria, on the readiness of the military to confront these terrorists? That's one way to look at it. Then the other ways to look at it is for us to become aware of how decision makers make their decisions in many parts of the world. We're talking about the United States now and the role that lobbyists play. But that's something that happens everywhere, because ultimately you have in the presidential system of government a president who makes the ultimate decision. Now, this president is human. Is not a superhuman, and definitely not divine. Does not know everything, and must depend on what? Must depend on what is told by many people. And that applies to leadership everywhere, even for people who are not president. Whether you're the leader of a small group, a small association, a small institution, or a big institution, ultimately you rely on the information you are fed by your subordinates. And these subordinates themselves, they are not superhuman beings. They are human beings themselves. They also rely on the information fed to them by their own subordinates, by the people serving under them. And then you begin to understand how lobbyists get their way. These lobbyists, they plant articles and news reports in newspapers. These articles and news reports, they shape people's views, the people who read them. And now, I just said newspapers. Now, it's not just newspapers, but on social media as well. There are many people on social media who are writing things, who are sharing views that are not their own. They are sharing views and opinions that are the views and opinions they were paid to share. And Christians who want to think faithfully and biblically about things should wise up to these things, should know that this is the way things work. That when you read people sharing opinions and having views, these most often than not, they are not their own views or opinions. They are views and opinions that have been commissioned. Because, of course, those who are commissioning this thing, they understand the importance of shaping public opinions. So if I fire up my Twitter app on my phone now and I read people's views about a particular matter, I begin to think, oh, this is what the majority is leaning towards. If you're not careful, you may just be influenced by what people have been commissioned to say. That is why people must think for themselves. We have to think for ourselves, even if the whole world says we are going this way. Think for yourself, and then take captive whatever view is being championed. Take it captive to make it submit to Christ, as Paul admonished us. Take every thought captive to make it submit to Christ. So we have to understand how leaders make decisions. Leaders make decisions based on the information available to them. The information available to them is fed them by their subordinates and their advisors. Their advisors also rely on their own advisors and subordinates, and ultimately these advisors also rely on, also influenced. Let's not say rely, but they also influence ultimately by what lobbyists do. Lobbyists who plant articles and news reports and events and promote information in the public space. So from a Christian point of view, you want to begin to understand what the Bible means when it says to us, first, above all, say prayers for those in government. Say prayers for those in government. Say prayers for leaders in government. Because if you don't say prayers for them, they are going to be misled. They need prayers. They are going to be misled. And then when they are misled, we are all going to suffer for it, which is what Paul wrote to Timothy. I believe that that's from maybe First Timothy 2. He said, I urge then, first of all, then I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in any way. He said, you pray for kings and those who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life. If you don't pray for them, that they're going to be misled by the many people who are out there, the lobbies and all those who are just angling for their own interest. They're going to be misled, and if they make the wrong decisions, we all are going to suffer for it. If you want to live quiet and peaceful lives, Paul, by the power of the Holy Spirit, admonished Timothy, look, you say prayers for this going. Now that we understand how competing information is fed, to those in authority, we must pray for them, and not only those who are political leaders, all our leaders, church leaders, cultural leaders, family leaders as well. And you also want to think again from a moral and Christian perspective about the lobbyists themselves. You want to ask yourself, can a Christian be a lobbyist? Of course, a Christian can be a lobbyist, and of course, should a Christian lobbyist lobby for any point of view as long as he has been paid? That cannot possibly be the case. From a Christian point of view, the first question is not, is there money to be made? Jesus said, the life of a man does not consist in the abundance of what he owns. The first thinking for a Christian is not, is there money to be made in this? The first question is, will God be glorified by me taking up this assignment? I mean, once you say something like this, just like the Pharisees made fun of Jesus, when Jesus spoke about money, in some portion of the gospel, it was recorded that the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, they made mockery of him. They laughed him to scorn. If you say something like this as well today, people may laugh you to scorn and say, well, the first question is not, is there money to be made? The first question is this God glorifying? And then, is it legal by the laws of the land? So I would say that given the evidence of Christian genocide in Nigeria, I would not expect anybody who is operating strictly from Christian perspective to be lobbying for the United States government or the people of the United States to believe the lie. You cannot lobby for the lie. Yes, lobbying can be legitimate advocacy. Oftentimes it is legitimate advocacy. But there is a line that a Christian who is a lobbyist must not cross, just for the sake of the monetary gain from it. So, in summary, the $150 million claim seems inflated. It seems sensational about a real but smaller disclosed lobbying effort. But the real truth is that public records show that the Nigerian government actually paid money up to $9 million, about 15 billion naira, to change the perspective in the Trump administration about the reality of Christian genocide in Nigeria. So, what do we take away from that? From a Christian perspective, for leaders, discernment is key. Discernment is key. A Christian who finds himself in a leadership position should realize that, look, your subordinates and your advisors themselves are probably being influenced by those who don't want you to do the right thing. You have to pray for discernment. You have to pray for grace to sift through everything. Those of us who are being led, who want to lead quiet and peaceful lives, must pray, as Paul admonished Timothy and Timothy's church, must pray for kings and all those in authority. And then for Christians, ultimately we must serve higher principles. And this is the best expression of it. When Jesus said the life of a man does not consist in the abundance of what he owns, what Jesus was saying is that a Christian must serve higher principles, not just money. And this is not a discourse about some of the Malay in the American cultural and political system, but you find that money has become a source of problem for even the American society. Once you have a society where everything is denominated in terms of money, what is there to be made, you're going to find ultimately decay setting in. Christians must have higher principles, whether they be people who are engaging lobbies or they be lobbies themselves. You have to serve higher principles. So, for example, if you know for a fact that the evidence points towards Christian genocide in northern Nigeria, you dare not accept a gig and that must be the exact word for it, where you begin to advocate for what is not true. We have to serve higher principles, not just power or money, but at the cause of the truth. Our lips are our own. You see, we cannot be like those who say this. And this is from Psalm 12, verse 4. That Psalm, verse 4, it talks about some people who say, by our tongues we will prevail. Our lips are our own. Who is Lord over us? We cannot be like that. These are the people who say, look, I can say what I want to say. I can write what I want to write because, well, there's money to be made. Our lips are not our own. Our thoughts are not even our own. Everything must be made, subject to Christ, himself. So Nigeria's challenges persist. Christian persecution continues. The genocide continues, and the wider insecurity problem continues in Nigeria. I'm not saying that the exact right response would be an invasion from the United States or direct military intervention by the United States. But the reality that the Nigerian government actually paid money to influence views and opinions in the U.S. is quite telling. It's quite telling, not one of the availability of funds for the Nigerian government, second about how public opinion is actually molded. Not just in the US, but everywhere in the world. So the next time you come across people taking a particular position on a particular matter, think again and say for yourself, how should I think? And that's something that is missing now in the world. People are not pausing to say, how should I think about this? Or what does the Bible say about this? How aligned is this view with the mind of Christ? Because more often than not, the opinions that are pressed upon us are commissioned opinions. And that should say a lot about the society we live in today. They are commissioned opinions. And the people sometimes who are so passionately advocating a view are people who have been paid to hold that view. Or not to hold the view, to publish those views. And in all good conscience, you cannot be a Christian when you hold one view but then you are propagating another. I recall there was a time that I used to have some relationship with a particular person who had some political connections, and we would be commissioned to write articles, political articles, advocating for one view or the other, and we were doing it. We got paid, for it, and these things will be published in the newspaper. At some point, I came to the conclusion I shouldn't be doing that, especially when I began to not agree, with the opinions published. And when I said to that person who usually comes, said, "Look, I don't want to do this." He said, "Why? Do you want us to increase the money you get paid for?" I said, "No, I just don't want to do that kind of gig." And that's what we again. And he said, "Look, what's wrong?" I said, "No, I just don't want to do it again." I think everybody must come to that point, where you serve higher principles. To serve higher principles, you cannot be championing and say, "Oh, but it's just a professional thing. It's just a career thing." You cannot be championing a point of view that you yourself fundamentally disagree with just because you're going to get paid for it. And I know that may be a challenge for many people who are financially challenged, but it's not. I mean, nobody has, except for the super rich, nobody has, super abundance for everything we need. But, at some point you have to rise and say, look, higher principles. And I pray the Lord will continue to help us to walk more faithfully with Him and to please Him at all times. In Jesus' name. Amen. I want to thank you for staying with us this morning on Gospel Best Radio for On the Lord's Side, Christian Perspectives on News and Current Events. I want to be with you again tomorrow by the grace of God. Whatever you do today, please remain firmly on the Lord's side. God bless you. God bless you really good.
You are listening to GospelBellsRadio.com, the Christian internet radio with a mission to engage the culture with the mind of Christ. Keep listening and invite others too. God bless you.
Engaging the culture with the mind of Christ.
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 Engaging the culture with the mind of Christ.